Crystal Gayle.
I like that.
It's so great to have you on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. And it really was. It was music was in the soul up there, and it still is. And days, and I was in the back of her bus, and she's writing music, and we're singing, and she's saying, "No, sing it this way," and I'll try it that way. She said, "No, let's try it."
Crystal Gayle was once one of the most recognizable faces in country music, a woman whose voice could glide effortlessly between heartbreak and hope, and whose image became just as unforgettable as her songs. For decades, she stood under bright stage lights with her signature floor-length hair flowing around her like a living symbol of timeless beauty. She sold over 40 million records, crossed into pop charts when few country artists could, and built a career that seemed almost untouchable. But recently, something about her appearance has sparked a wave of reactions that no one expected. When new photos began circulating online, longtime fans paused, looked twice, and struggled to reconcile the woman they remembered with the one they were now seeing. At 74, Crystal Gayle looks different. Not in a way that erases who she is, but in a way that reminds people just how much time has passed, and how much she herself has changed. To understand why that reaction has been so strong, you have to go back to where her story began. Long before the fame, before the awards, and before the spotlight ever found her, she was simply Brenda Gayle Webb, born on January 9, 1951, in Paintsville, Kentucky. She was the youngest of 8 children, growing up in a family where money was always tight and the future often felt uncertain. Her father worked in coal mines, a job that demanded everything from him while slowly taking his health in return. By the time Crystal was old enough to understand the world around her, she could already sense the strain in her home. The long hours, the physical toll, and the quiet worry that never seemed to leave her parents created an atmosphere where survival always came before comfort. When her father's health began to fail due to black lung disease, the family faced a decision that would change everything. They left Kentucky behind and moved to Indiana, hoping that better medical care might give him a chance. But the move came with its own challenges. The place was unfamiliar, the people were different, and the sense of belonging they once had seemed to disappear overnight. Her mother worked tirelessly, taking on whatever jobs she could find just to keep food on the table. Even as a child, Crystal felt the emotional weight of it all. It wasn't something anyone had to explain to her. It was simply there, in the silence, in the tension, in the way her family carried themselves through each day. Then, when she was just 8 years old, everything shifted in a way that no child is ever fully prepared for. Her father passed away, leaving her mother to raise 8 children on her own. The loss changed Crystal deeply. She didn't express her grief loudly, but it settled quietly inside her, shaping the way she saw the world. She learned early how to stay strong, how to adapt, and how to keep moving forward, even when life felt overwhelming. Those early lessons would follow her into adulthood, becoming part of the quiet resilience that defined her both on and off the stage. Music entered her life not as a grand ambition at first, but as a kind of refuge. It was something that allowed her to step outside the pressures of her reality, even if only for a moment. By her early teens, she was already singing with her siblings, joining a family band that gave her a taste of something bitter. Trips to Nashville exposed her to the music industry at a young age, and while it was exciting, it also came with its own set of challenges. Standing in that world was her older sister, Loretta Lynn, already a rising star with a powerful presence. For Crystal, that meant constant comparisons. No matter how well she performed, she was often seen through the lens of her sister's success. Still, she didn't walk away. She kept showing up, kept singing, and kept searching for her own voice within a space that often tried to define her before she could define herself. After finishing high school, she made the decision to pursue music seriously. It wasn't an easy path. The road was filled with long drives, modest pay, and the kind of uncertainty that makes many people turn back. But for her, there was something about being on stage that felt undeniable. It was the one place where everything else seemed to fade, even if only temporarily. Around this time, she also faced a moment that would shape her identity in a more visible way. With another artist already using the name Brenda, she needed something new. The name Crystal Gayle came into her life almost by chance, yet it fit her perfectly. It carried a sense of elegance and uniqueness that matched the image she would later become known for. With a new name and a growing sense of purpose, she stepped further into the industry, ready to see where the journey would take her. Her early years in music, however, were far from easy. She released songs that showed promise, but they didn't immediately turn her into a star. Record labels often pushed her to sound more like Loretta, believing that familiarity would sell better than individuality. For Crystal, this created a constant tension. She wanted to be herself, to explore her own style, but the industry kept steering her in a different direction. There were moments when it felt like she was losing herself in the process, like her voice was being shaped into something that didn't fully belong to her. That struggle nearly ended her career before it truly began. When her early releases failed to break through in a major way, the possibility of being dropped by her label became very real. It was a turning point, one that forced her to make a difficult decision. Instead of continuing down a path that didn't feel right, she chose to step away and take a risk on something new. It wasn't a safe choice, especially in an industry known for closing doors just as quickly as it opens them. But it was necessary. That decision changed everything. With a new label and a producer who saw her potential in a different light, Crystal began to explore a sound that felt more authentic to her. It was smoother, more polished, blending elements of country and pop in a way that hadn't been widely embraced at the time. When her breakthrough finally came, it didn't just shift her career, it redefined it. She was no longer seen as someone standing in her sister's shadow. She had become a star in her own right. The release of Don't It Make My Brown Eyes Blue marked a moment that would define her legacy. The song didn't just succeed, it resonated across audiences in a way that few tracks ever do. It climbed the charts, crossed into mainstream pop success, and introduced her to listeners who might never have explored country music otherwise. With that single, she became one of the first female country artists to truly break into the global spotlight in such a powerful way. But success, as it often does, came with complications. Not everyone welcomed her new sound. Traditionalists within the country music world criticized her for moving too far away from the genre's roots. Some questioned her authenticity, while others openly dismissed her style as too polished. The debates grew louder as her popularity increased, placing her in a position where she was celebrated and criticized at the same time. Amid all of this, her image became a defining part of her identity. Her long, flowing hair wasn't just a personal choice, it became a symbol. Fans admired it, media outlets talked about it, and over time, it became inseparable from how people saw her. It was unique, instantly recognizable, and in many ways, it helped cement her place in the public imagination. As the years went on, she continued to build on her success. Hit songs, major performances, and television appearances kept her in the spotlight. She reached levels of fame that few artists ever experience, becoming a household name not just in the United States, but around the world. Yet behind the scenes, the pressures of maintaining that level of success began to take their toll. The music industry itself was changing. Trends shifted, new artists emerged, and the sound that once set her apart became less dominant in a rapidly evolving landscape. Album sales began to decline, and the momentum she once had started to slow. It wasn't a sudden fall, but rather a gradual shift that many artists eventually face. For someone who had experienced such incredible highs, adjusting to those changes wasn't easy. There were also personal challenges that added to the complexity of her journey. Balancing a demanding career with family life required constant effort. She worked to keep her private life separate from the public eye, protecting her children from the pressures that came with fame. It was a delicate balance, one that required strength and intention. Over time, she began to explore different directions in her music. She experimented with new styles, including gospel and jazz, stepping outside the boundaries that had once defined her career. While these projects didn't always achieve the same level of commercial success, they allowed her to reconnect with her passion in a different way. They showed that her artistry wasn't limited to one genre, even if the public didn't always follow her in those shifts. As she entered later stages of her career, health challenges also became part of her reality. Vocal strain and other issues forced her to be more careful about how and when she performed. It was a reminder that even the strongest voices require care, especially after decades of use. Despite these challenges, she continued to perform, adapting to what her body allowed, while holding on to the connection she had with her audience. The passing of her sister, Loretta Lynn, marked another deeply emotional chapter in her life. It was a loss that carried both personal and symbolic weight. Their relationship had been shaped by love, comparison, and shared history, and losing her meant losing a part of that story. In the months that followed, Crystal stepped back, taking time to process the grief and reflect on everything they had been through together. Then came the moment that brought her back into public conversation in a way few expected. When she spoke about possibly cutting her iconic hair, the reaction was immediate and intense. For many fans, it felt almost unthinkable. That hair had been part of her image for so long that it seemed inseparable from who she was. Petitions circulated, messages poured in, and the response revealed just how deeply people had connected that single feature to her identity. But for Crystal, the conversation wasn't just about appearance. It was about something more personal. After carrying that image for decades, she began to reflect on what it meant to hold on to it. The weight wasn't only physical, it was symbolic. It represented expectations, history, and a version of herself that the world had grown attached to. Letting go of it, even in a small way, meant stepping into a new phase of her life. Today, when people see her, they may notice the changes first. The differences in appearance, the subtle shifts that come with time. But those changes don't erase the story behind them. They don't take away the voice that defined a generation, or the resilience that carried her through decades of challenges. If anything, they add another layer to a life that has always been about growth and transformation. Crystal Gayle's story isn't just about fame or image. It's about endurance, about finding your identity in a world that constantly tries to shape it for you, and about having the courage to evolve even when people expect you to stay the same. And while her appearance may have changed, the legacy she built remains exactly where it has always been, etched into the music, the memories, and the countless lives she touched along the way.